On today's Locked On Nationals, we are joined by Bobby Blanco from MASNsports.com, and we are just 2 days removed from the Nationals winning the MLB draft lottery. And should this be an easy decision for the Nationals at 1-1?
You are Locked On Nationals, your daily Washington Nationals podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you all for making Locked On Nationals your first listen every single day, as we are free and available wherever you get your podcasts. And of course, check us out wherever you get your pods. Just search up Locked On Nationals on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and more. Again, search Locked On Nationals, and that is where you'll find your daily coverage of the Washington Nationals. Later on in today's show, well, first off, we're joined by Bobby Blanco from MASNsports.com. We're going to get Bobby's thoughts on Juan Soto signing with the New York Mets. And also, Juan Soto gets introduced today at Citi Fields. We'll discuss that later on in today's program. In the second segment, we're going to get into the latest free agency rumors with the Nationals. Who are they in on, or if they're in on anybody at this point? And what can we see coming down here soon for the Nationals? Maybe a trade, maybe a free agent signing. We'll have that discussion in the second segment. But we start off discussing the MLB draft. The Nationals, they won the draft lottery. Before we get into anything, today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. So, Bobby, how are we doing today, my friend?
Oh, we're doing well. Getting closer to the holidays, getting closer for me to count down to baby time. So,
yeah,
we're kind of sitting and waiting, but keeping an eye on any news coming out of baseball, the baseball world too. The winter meetings wrapped up. It was an eventful winter meetings. I guess you could say it was eventful for the Nationals too, winning the draft lottery. But obviously, Juan Soto stole the show over this past week. But yeah, man, just counting down to the holidays and to being a dad.
Yeah, I know. Baby Blanco is on the way here. So, I mean, we wish you the best of luck. And obviously, I'm sure Locked On Nationals listeners will send you a ton of love over the next few days here. So, but Bobby, the Nationals, they won the MLB draft lottery, man. I mean, this is a pretty great thing for this organization. And if I'm not mistaken, this is back-to-back years where they've actually won the lottery. But last year, they couldn't pick inside the top 10. Is that right?
Yeah, this is like there's been 3 MLB draft lotteries, and the Nationals have finished second and technically first twice. So, yeah, I mean, as much as I think, at least for me, as much as I was complaining about this because it came at the worst time when the Nationals were by far the worst team, probably would have had back-to-back years picking number 1 overall. This is actually working out well for them. They could not pick, they could not be in the lottery last year because they are for lack of a better word, big market team, a higher earning revenue team. So they can't be in the lottery in back-to-back seasons. Smaller market teams can be in back-to-back seasons. They can't do 3 straight. So that's why you saw teams like the White Sox and the A's, who have historically bad seasons, not involved in the lottery this year and increase the Nats' chance to get a higher pick. I think they only had a 10.2 chance of being number 1 overall. They were likely to be slotted at like 6 or 7. And I mean, it's kind of funny that Colton Cowser was calling, the draft order, the Baltimore Orioles former number 5 overall pick. And then, the Nationals come up number 1. They go 1-1 and low odds. But, I think that's like kind of, the baseball gods throwing the Nationals fans a bone here after everyone was just so depressed over the weekend and earlier this week with Juan Soto signing that massive contract with the Mets. It's kind of like one of my friends literally swore off baseball. One of my best friends swore off baseball, huge Nats fan, because not just Juan Soto, but like so many former Nationals greats have now signed long-term deals with division rivals. Think of all those guys with the Phillies, now Juan Soto with the Mets. And he's just like, I'm done. I'm out. I can't watch baseball anymore. 2 days later, the Nats win the draft lottery, and he's like, they pulled me right back in. So, yeah. So, I mean, I think that's the baseball gods giving the Nats fans a little bit of a bone here with winning the draft lottery. It's exciting, man. I mean, this is going to be the 3rd time the Nationals have drafted in the top 5 in the last 5 drafts. Obviously, the third time they've selected number 1 overall back, when they had back-to-back number 1 picks in 2009 and 2010 with Steven Strasburg and Bryce Harper. So you're thinking that they're going to get a guy that's going to be, they could go high school prep guy. We'll talk about Ethan Holliday, obviously. But if you go an experienced college bat, you could be talking about a guy that could be ready to break into the major league ranks in the next couple of seasons. But even if you draft Ethan Holliday, look what his brother did. Some scouts have him rated higher than Jackson already.
Yeah.
So Jackson was at this time when in his career. So it's exciting. I think, this is such a boost to this farm system, to this rebuild. I mean, we've talked so much about how next year could be the year the Nationals finally take a major step forward and are competing for a playoff spot again. Not saying they're going to make it, but at least going to be in the conversation come late August, September. And then now you have a top 10. Some places have them as a top 5 farm system, and you're going to add another top prospect to that. I mean, when Dylan Cruz was selected number 2 overall, of course, he was a sure thing coming out of college, but, he was immediately one of a top 5 prospect in all of baseball. You're looking at getting someone who's going to be like that, adding to this already top-ranked farm system. So after next year's draft, depending what they have to do with the trade deadline, you could be looking at late next summer, this farm system with a competitive major league team could be like a top 5, top 3 farm system just based on this one pick and whatever they end up doing at the trade deadline.
Yeah, and I mean, this is kind of one of those things where, as you were saying, with the Juan Soto news, I mean, I woke up Monday morning like, do I have to talk about this? I don't want to talk about this. It was like seeing Juan Soto, and again, we're used to this at this point. Like, I saw someone use the analogy of it's the girl who got away, and not only did she get away, but she's now happy and in love and about to get married to your next door neighbor. Yeah. And we've done this not once, not twice, but 3 times now with Bryce Harper, Trey Turner, and also now you have Juan Soto. And even then, we can also throw in a 4th time with Max Scherzer, who signed with the Mets. Kyle Schwarber, too. I mean, so many guys that...
Yeah. Unfortunately, the list is very long.
Yeah, the list is very long. And it's you're just surrounded by all these ex-lovers that you're like, this is the one. And you do that 4 times over now. So, and then you wake up and you're like, okay, this is the reality. Later on, Nationals land the 1st overall pick and the MLB draft lottery. And at the top of the board, it's Ethan Holliday, man.
Yeah.
I mean, this is someone who has been a highly touted prospect for a couple of years now, for considering that he is number 1, Matt Holliday's son. He is the brother of Jackson Holliday, who's the 1st round pick or the 1st overall pick back in 2023, Bobby?
22.
22. Yes. 22. And yeah, 2023 is Paul Skeens. But I mean, this is a huge day. This is, again, just a huge momentum builder for the Washington Nationals. But I want to ask you this, Bobby, is it going to be an easy decision for the Nationals at 1-1? Is the no-brainer pick to select Ethan Holliday 1st overall, or should the Nationals try and go a different route? And even then, there's still a whole season of baseball to be played in college ball as well as high school ball. So who knows what happens coming down the piper here. But should this be an easy decision for Mike Rizzo and the rest of the staff there?
It's kind of the funny thing about the MLB draft, which honestly might be a bonus. The one, we complain about it, but here we are. The Nationals have won 2 in a row, and even though they didn't count last year and have finished 2nd, and it's been mostly beneficial for them. But the one good thing about the MLB lottery and the draft system that they have now is that the lottery takes place in December and the draft isn't until next July. So you have a full, amateur, high school, college season of scouting to do. Now you have the number 1 pick. So you are only focusing, no one can go pick ahead of you. You have the entire country available to you. So you can only focus on whoever you want. It's easier to spread out your scouting resources, your draft resources. You can have 5 names at the top of your list. This is for a fact it's going to be one of these 5 guys. Let's just scout these guys all season long. It's different than the basketball draft, right? Because the NBA draft lottery takes place in late May.
June. Yeah, June, something like that.
And then the draft is in late June. So, or right after the finals, so it's your scouting's already done because the college and high school seasons are over and international seasons probably are over too, but you don't know where you're picking yet. So it's like you kind of have to like go on the fly in the basketball draft. Baseball draft, and the way the lottery is set up, you have a full baseball season ahead of you of scouting to prepare for this draft, which is, I think, a huge benefit for the Nationals. I think Ethan, like, if the draft were in 2 weeks, like it is in the NBA, yes, I think Ethan Holliday easily goes 1-1. But luckily, that's not the case. So they do have some time to scout. The thing is, it's like, with Ethan, he's scouted as right now, I think, like reading Baseball America's evaluation from him, he's already a better prospect now than Jackson was leading up to his draft. And of course, he went 1-1, top prospect overall, still getting his feet wet in the majors. But I think no one is concerned that he's going to be a stud at some point. Ethan's already scouted as a better prospect overall. He has better size. He's more built like his dad than Jackson is. He has power. He can play pretty much any position in the infield. They could also shift to the outfield. He has a little more defensive flexibility than Jackson, who is pretty much stuck up the middle of the field. And on the infield, that is second base and shortstop. So you're looking at a guy who it's going to be hard to pass up, especially if he rakes in high school like his brother did leading up to his draft. And just thinking about Jackson Holliday's rise up the Orioles system, which at the time was the number one overall system in baseball for 3 consecutive years.
Yeah.
And he was by far the best player of all those guys. And it wasn't even close. And so he flew up, obviously made his major league debut this year, struggled at times, of course, but again, he's Jackson's 21.
Yeah,
it's that. Ethan's only 17 now. He'll be 18 at some point soon next year. So yeah, I just think that right now, Ethan's the number one pick, but luckily the Nationals don't have to pick right now. They have 7 months to do their scouting. And I think one important thing to also note is that the Nationals revamped their scouting, their whole draft war room personnel last offseason. Brad Ciolik is the senior director of amateur scouting for the Nationals right now. He was in charge of the the Orioles scouting department and their entire draft operations the year that the Orioles selected Jackson Holliday number 1 overall. So he already has ties to the Holliday family. He's probably already seen Ethan a bunch. I think that's an easy line to draw right there. So like, I honestly think it's going to have to take Ethan Holliday, which I doubt because it's high school. It's probably way too easy for him at this point. But Ethan to have a really bad season and someone else like a Jace Laviolette, Tyler Bremer, whoever, like that Seth Hernandez pitcher, that high school pitcher in California, to just have outstanding, unbelievable seasons to really leapfrog him at number 1. But again, it's December. We don't have to decide until July.
Yeah, and I think it's kind of interesting because you mentioned Jace Laviolette. He's kind of like the older, more mature version of Ethan Holliday. I think they're actually very similar prospects. Like they both have massive power. I mean, solid hit tools. Like they're going to be really good pro players. At least that's what we project them to be. And I think they're very comparable. So it's like one that you could get is, Ethan Holliday does have the higher ceiling. I feel like at this point, I'll always kind of lean towards the high school bat developing a little bit more than what you see in college. But I think like if you end up with either of those guys at this point, and again, like it is December, they've got 7 months to make this decision. I'm sure they'll make the right decision come mid-July, but they're in a great spot right now. And again, adding that impact kind of prospect in this system will be huge for this rebuild. But Bobby, it's not just about prospects here. Unfortunately for the Nationals, we got to get some free agents. We're going to get into some latest free agency rumors, if there are any. And if there aren't, we could be in trouble. We'll discuss that after we tell you about our friends over at FanDuel and get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. And you get a hunch in the middle of the game. You can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That is FanDuel.com, and never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Now we get back into it with Bobby Blanco from MASNsports.com. And Bobby, free agency has started. I think we should probably let the Nationals know at this point in time that free agency has started, because you haven't really seen too much. You see like these little smaller rumors that like they're in on Christian Walker, they're in on Pete Alonso, but I'm not really getting the sense that the Nationals will be spending much this offseason. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, we were talking a little bit before we came on air. The winter meetings just wrapped up yesterday, last night, and I wasn't there, so it's kind of harder for me to speak on it, but it seemed like, and it felt like, a much quieter winter meetings than it has been for the Nationals, aside from winning the draft lottery and taking someone in the Rule 5 draft. But like, there wasn't really any rumors leaking out of, so-and-so met with this team, so-and-so met with the Nationals, Mike Rizzo, has been checking in on yada, yada, yada. I mean, it was just none of that. And like last year, the year prior, that was the case as well, but that was by design. We knew they weren't going to go into the winter meetings and signing anybody big. I think last year, though, they at least came away with Nick Senzel. And, while that didn't...
At least they came away with Nick Senzel. That is a sad line.
We know how that worked out, but at the time, it was a recognizable name.
Yeah.
It was a major league move. And it was a recognizable name that was filling a need at third base. Obviously, that didn't end up working out, but that's not the case. That's not the point. The point is that at least they made a move last winter meetings to try to improve the major league roster. There was very little whispers this year of anything happening. So yeah, I mean, I get some Nationals fans' frustrations, especially when you're seeing, some of the more names fly off the top of the board. I mean, like Corbin Burns is still available. The Yankees are checking in on Cody Bellinger. There are still like a lot of top. Pete Alonso is still available. There are a lot of still top names. Christian Walker, just because Juan Soto and Max Fried and Blake Snell, all those guys have signed, doesn't mean that free agency is over. It does. I do understand people's frustration that it has been quiet on the Nationals front, and the winter meetings is a time in the offseason where things do kind of heat up a little bit, and they didn't this year. But I still think there's plenty of time. There's still plenty of names out there. It's going to be quiet for the next couple of weeks because of the holidays. And then, ideally, they didn't sign Max Scherzer until January.
Yeah. So here's the thing, though, Bobby. And this could just be first and foremost, if you were to ask me this, do I have any faith in this ownership group sitting here today, spending money and really investing in this club and getting it back up to being a perennial contender? I don't have much faith. I'm not saying it can't happen, because it has happened before, and I have seen this ownership group kind of do what's right and spend a ton of money and put this baseball team back on the map. But at this point, I also think getting that number 1 overall pick, the budget is already set. We don't know what it is. We don't know how much they're allowed to spend this offseason. But whatever it is, I just have a feeling that, and I hope to God I'm wrong, but I just have this feeling that, they got the number 1 overall pick. I wouldn't be surprised if the Lerner family or someone in that group is like, hey, this is going to be an impactful player. Let's not try to overspend here in free agency. You're going to get an impactful guy now. I hope this doesn't impact in any way, shape, or form the way that they address free agency after winning the draft lottery. And I don't really expect that it will, but I just have an irrational fear at this point that could be the case. And seeing that the Nationals aren't in heavy rumors, and you're not seeing Jeff Passan being the Nationals are in on Pete Alonso, the Nationals are in on Christian Walker, and you have seen people say that, but it just doesn't really seem that prominent at this point. And that is a frustrating part if you're a Nationals fan. Like, we know that at this point, if you add a starting pitcher, like a good starting pitcher, and if you add a first baseman and or a power bat in general, you will be in a good position. And I just don't think the Nationals will address those needs this offseason. And the better question might be is like, well, is the time now? And I do think the time is now. Like, the time is now. Like, you have Dylan Cruz in the bigs. You have James Wood. You have this second wave of guys like Brady House and others coming up the piper as well. And it just doesn't seem like this ownership group is that invested into making improvements on this roster. And we all know they need it.
I disagree. Like, I understand the kind of point that like winning the draft lottery was unexpected. So maybe like, all right, that's an impactful bet coming up at some point that we ideally or probably a bet. But yeah, I see that point. That's just not how baseball like drafting operates. And I think the learners know that. I mean, I think you're not giving the learners enough credit of understanding that, because that's not a problem. They're going to, I mean, like, yes, you get the number one pick, you're going to have to pay that slot value. I mean, that's a lot of money coming up to, you know, a high school player or whatever it may be, but like, that's a one-time thing. And that's not, you know, then, you know, his minor league checks aren't going to be as big, but whatever. No, I get it. Like, I understand, like, you know, people's fears. And my fear too is that, you know, I'm not surprised at how quiet they've been, but I think the rate that we're seeing players come off the board and get overpaid, especially pitchers, which is a need for this Nationals team, I think is concerning, because now anyone that we thought could be in their realm of, you know, one, fitting a need, two, at a reasonable price, is going to go above that. I mean, we saw Luis Severino was one that the Nationals had been linked to early in this offseason that could be a good fit at a reasonable price. And he got over every projection that every outlet thought he was going to get from the Athletics of all teams, right? Like, we're the least spending teams in all of baseball. They don't even have a home. So that's more my concern, that they're not, because they're not spending right now, the price tag for everybody else is going up. And that's when I would fear, if I'm a Nationals fan, that they're going to be, you know, out of the running for some guys because the price tags are going to be too high because they waited too long. If that makes sense. Like, no. I don't think they're out totally on some of these guys, but at the rate that these players, all players, position players and pitchers, are signing for way above their value or their predicted value, it's just gonna, like, they might get priced out on a Christian Walker, because, you know, depending who signs first, if Pete Alonso signs first and gets this massive deal, you know, to re-sign with the Mets or maybe go to the Yankees, you know, that increases Christian Walker's value too. And it's going to be like, well, I don't know if we can afford that or if we should afford that. So that's more of my concern, is that the waiting, like, it's not, it's a, to put it like in another term, it's not a buyer's market, it's a seller's market. Like, it's a good time to be a baseball free agent right now, because all these price tags are going up. All these contracts are more years, more guarantee, more money, higher signing bonuses, less opt-outs, no trade clauses. All that stuff is benefiting all the players so much. And that's a Steve Cohen issue, really. But I mean, some of these teams are getting kind of bought out. I mean, you can also point to the Orioles are kind of doing the same thing. Like, they're waiting around a little bit, and, you know, at some point are they going to get outpriced because they are a smaller market team, and, you know, some of these guys' values are just going skyrocketing. I mean, I don't know. That's my concern right now, is like, the longer they wait, the higher these guys are going to cost. And at some point, it's going to cross a threshold where, you know, ownership or Mike Rizzo himself are going to be like, that's not worth it.
Yeah, no, I hear you on that, man. I do. You're right. You're right, Bobby. You're more right than I am.
So it's not overall. My concern is not that they're not being tied with anybody. It's that the waiting, I think, is going to hurt them in the long run.
That's true. That is all fair points. But Bobby, Juan Soto has signed with the New York Mets. I haven't spoken with you since this has happened. I want your thoughts. We'll discuss that after we tell you about our friends over at Gametime. And Gametime, if you don't know, they have a new feature called Gametime Picks, and Gametime has a new feature called that Gametime Picks, as I read the script, that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Some of my favorite features on Game Time includes curated deals that make it easier to find the best price on great seats, and of course, the seat views before you buy. For instance, when I go up to Caps games for Capital One Arena, I am on that Metro. I open up my Game Time app. I click that game for tonight, and of course, check out Game Time. I get to see where I'll be sitting with a view right on my phone, and I can see if there's any obstruction or anything of that nature right there on my phone. And it's just 2 clicks away, and bam, you've got your tickets, and you're walking to Capital One Arena to watch Alex Ovechkin and the Caps. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time and download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time. Now we get back into it with Bobby Blanco from NASNsports.com. And Bobby, Juan Soto is a New York Met. What do you make of it?
I think it's every Nationals fan biggest fear come true. You know, if I'm taking my reporter hat off and putting on my fan hat, it was my biggest fear. You know, it's one thing to sign. It's one thing for him to land with the Mets, right? It's another thing to he just adds on to that list of Bryce Harper, Trey Turner, Max Scherzer,
Kills.
Kyle Schwarber.
Kills me.
It's just so many former beloved all-star players that spend a majority of their career here or started their career here, made a name for themselves here in DC, and then now signing with an NL East rival. But you know, here's the thing: if you want a bright side opinion of it, everyone
don't say it.
What?
Don't say it.
What do you think I'm going to say?
Don't say it.
What do you think I'm going to say?
You're going to say that he's not worth the money.
I was going to say he's not worth it. I'm going to say he's being overpaid. I don't know if that's the same. I don't think it's
okay.
The same.
Okay. Yes, you're right. It's different.
Like good for Juan Soto. I'm happy for him as a person. I'm happy for him as a guy. Always liked Juan Soto. I wish it were anywhere else but New York, Philly, Atlanta, Miami. But that is an awful lot of money to guarantee to one player who is probably going to spend a majority of that contract as a DH. He's getting paid more than Shohei Ohtani, who doesn't, and Shohei Ohtani at least pitches.
True.
Or is going to pitch at some point. You know, Juan's probably going to move to maybe first base in a couple of years and then be a full-time DH for a majority of that contract. That's a lot of money. I mean, I get this is a Steve Cohen issue. It's not really a Juan Soto or Mets issue. Like Steve Cohen, when his offseason, he was not going to be outbid. Now, I do think that I saw some reports there was some shady stuff where like the Yankees didn't get an opportunity to counter offer. And there were some reports that Juan actually wasn't that happy with the Yankees, which I don't really necessarily buy. I think it's more that Juan, the Steve Cohen wasn't going to lose.
Yeah, I think that's part of it too. But did you see like the report where Juan Soto was like upset with like a travel secretary and how
with their family,
which honestly, like I could believe because the Yankees, I mean, they have their weird rules and you have to sacrifice some things to play in that pinstripes in Bronx there. And I think Steve Cohen and the strategy that they used to get Juan Soto to the Mets was brilliant. I mean, I heard that I've read all the pieces about it. And they're talking about how Steve Cohen brought everyone and everything to the meetings, laid out how everything would work through family, through travel, what it would look like in the clubhouse, what would he look like as a Met, their future plan. And also, Bobby, the thing that like kind of kills me about this, and we're running up against it a little bit here, but it's the fact that he chose the Mets, though, and no one can convince me otherwise, because they have a brighter future than the Yankees, and they do, and that sucks to say that. They've got everything you could possibly want. They've got a great manager at this point. They've got talent. They've got David Stearns, president of baseball ops, who has consistently produced a great farm system in smaller markets and kept the Brewers afloat for years on years. And that sucks to admit, is that I think the reason why he chose the Mets was not because they were going to pay him $5 million more. It's because the fact that they're just good.
It's not $5 million more. Overall, it's $5 million more.
Mm-hmm.
It's like 15-20 million per year more.
That's true.
And I really think if I do, like, all right, I can believe all that. But like, if all things were even, like if the Yankees came back with the same contract, now maybe you're right. I find it hard to believe that one travel secretary mishap is going to deter him from re-signing with the Yankees.
Yeah.
He grew up Yankees fans. He grew up a huge Yankees fan. Obviously, his whole family are Yankees fans. He has family that literally lives in the Bronx, even before he was traded to the Yankees. So, like, everything about his entire being, aside from coming up a national, was tied to the Yankees. So, I think if everything was even, he's a Yankee. Everything was not even, though, because Steve Cohen said this is not going to be even. And I guess the Yankees weren't given a chance to match. And it sounds like they wouldn't have anyways, although I find that hard to believe. I think they would have. The same thing almost happened with Aaron Judge. Remember? Like, everyone thought he was going to the Padres or the Giants, which one of those
Giants.
teams.
Arson Judge.
Right. The Giants. And at the last second, the Yankees said, nope, we're not losing this guy. Up their offer and got him. I think if the Yankees actually had a legit shot to either match or succeed, now this could have been just a battle of upping offers, and I think Steve Cohen wasn't going to lose. Like, he would have gone to 800 million on the dot. So I think that's more the issue, and then that's more of internal. Like, it's, I guess, cool for Mets fans. It's going to suck for the rest of baseball that Steve Cohen seemingly has endless pockets like the Dodgers. I also think, like, okay, the Mets have a good future, I guess, but you're competing with the Dodgers every year from here on out. The Yankees, who's Matt? I mean, maybe the Red Sox in a couple of years, but the Yankees have handled the Orioles pretty well the past couple of seasons. Who's challenging the Yankees in the American League right now? The Astros are being torn down pretty much. Like, I think if he really wants to win championships, he's an easier path at least to the World Series with the Yankees. Now you have to get past the Dodgers and now maybe the Mets. But I mean, going back to the National League, I think is going to be harder for him to win championships because you have to go through the Dodgers in October, and they are set up to win forever now. I'm still taking the Dodgers over the Mets, even with Juan Soto adding to their Mets lineup. I mean, if they get Pete Alonso back, okay, maybe it's a different conversation. But I just think it's a harder track. I don't know. The whole thing was weird. It sucks for Nationals fans.
It's awful.
It's awful. But again, like, it's not a Juan Soto issue. It's more of a Steve Cohen issue where he's just going to dish out stupid money. And, there's only 3 teams in the whole entire league, maybe entire world, who can afford that. And it's 2 of them are in New York and 1 of them's in LA. And that's it. That's the end of the story. Like, even if the Nationals were in on Juan Soto, there's no way that they would have been able to match that offer. No other team can do that. Like that.
I know
3 teams that can do that. And I think we also could have been like, if the Nationals did do that, like, well, that's exciting. Juan Soto's coming back, but man, are they screwed in the future? Like, that is so much money to one player who's probably going to be a DH for, let's just say 9 of those 15 seasons. So
it's tough.
Good for Juan, but I mean, like, I don't know. I'm hoping he does well. I'm hoping the Mets overall don't do well.
That's exactly where I'm at. Like, he's still my favorite player ever, but I cannot root for the Mets. But Bobby,
he has an opt-out. So,
yeah, you never know. Maybe the Nats in 5 years.
Maybe this was the worst decision I've ever made. I want out. I want to go back to maybe this time the Nationals are ready for him. Maybe he wants to go back to the Bronx. Who knows?
Yeah, who knows, man. But Bobby, always appreciate the time, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Ryan. Enjoy New Orleans.
Yes. I'll be heading to New Orleans tonight. And while I'm in New Orleans, baby Blanca's on the way. Yeah. So we wish you the best of luck, man. And of course, we'll be thinking about you and your wife. And so wish nothing but the best, man.
Thank you very much. Appreciate all the kind words and all the support you've had throughout this year, this offseason.
Of
Hope to
course.
see you sometime next time, probably in the year 2025.
Baseball. Yeah, it'll be 2025. So that's Bobby Blanco. Catch him over on Twitter at Bobby_Blanco. I'm Ryan Clary. I will catch you guys on the flip side. Have a good one. Go Nats.